Well, the drama continues surrounding the World Championships that happened in Wollongong, Australia. And this time it's not about Matthew van der Poel, but it's about Annemiek, who won the female road race. And she's been pinged for wearing a skin suit claimed by the UCI, and also her socks were too long. And we know about the good old sock rule. It's probably the most well-known rule in the UCI, bar none, because it's a silly rule. Well, anyway, in this case, it was applied and there was a fine involved. So let's roll our intro and let's have a talk about how the UCI acts in these situations and how the rulings and punishments seem to vary somewhat. Well, I've criticised the UCI in the past many times, and the reason why I've done that is because I just can't get my head around how they apply the punishments. It seems to me that there seems to be some sort of favour on how hard they go with the punishments or how strong they go with the punishments. Like someone may be completely disqualified from the race, you'll have other people that lose points, and then you have some other people like Annemiek who win the race, but their actual win is not affected. All they do is just fine them. And you got to really say to yourself, for someone who's probably earning a bit of money, quite successful, paying a fine is probably the least of her woes when she's just taken the crown for the World Championships, the Women's World Championships, and especially at her age, she probably hasn't got too many years left to keep doing this. Admittedly, she had a broken arm. Maybe they may have felt sorry for her. I don't know. But the application of the rules, regardless of whether you've got a broken arm, you've had a crash just a day before or whatever, the rules should be applied evenly to all participants. Now, we've seen this in the past with the UCI, and even commentators have kind of just gone, how the hell do they come to these punishments? And we've even seen one guy who was riding these narrower handlebars and people like to lean on them to get more aero. So that's also an aerodynamic advantage. And in that case, it was assessed by the people from the UCI that assessed at the beginning of the race. It was passed. And then during the race, then they disqualified the rider. Now, they may have said the handlebars are okay, and when he used them, they disqualified him. But let's face it, he's got the handlebars on there, those particular handlebars on there, so he can ride the bike in a certain way. That's the whole benefit of riding those handlebars. So then they eventually decided to ban these narrow handlebars. So it's a little bit, I think it's a little bit unusual how they apply the rules. In that situation, they should have said, hey, look, you can't ride with those handlebars and you can't use them flat out. But there seems to be some interpretation variance between the teams and what they can get away with the UCI. Now, in this case, with Annemiek, they must have known what the length of the socks is. I mean, it's kind of the most well-known law, and apparently they were significantly longer. So were they just taking a risk and hoping they'd get away with it, or what? I mean, the teams know the rules just as well as the UCI do, and especially a rule like the sock rules that anyone who's about cycling has heard of the sock rule. So it's not like some obscure rule that you go, oh man, what the hell, never even heard of that rule. It's an obvious rule. The socks have to be a certain length, and that length, I'm not familiar with the exact length, but it's something to do with not being more than halfway up the calves. I don't know how they define that, but I would have made it a measurement. But anyway, that's how it's defined, apparently. So this was significantly longer than that, and the UCI came down on Annemiek, but only with a fine. There was no penalty for the race, which I just can't see that type of logic. To me, if they're in a race and they're using an advantage that can give them some more speed advantage, then a fine to me is not a fit punishment. So in conclusion, What I make of this is, again, the UCI being inconsistent. Whether they're throwing a drink, a bidet or a drink bottle, or they're taking a bottle from someone in the later stages of that stage, which they're not allowed to do. Some get away with it, some don't. And then we've got sock lengths and all this other stuff, handlebars. And there's probably even other little things that some people get pinged for, get a very slap on the wrist, and then someone else, it's like, oh, you're disqualified. The application of the punishments seems to be completely blows my mind. It's just, there should be a set punishment. Like, I did a video on the sticky bottle, and we know that people hang on to the bottles or they motor paste the back of the cars on, and sometimes they allow it and sometimes they don't. And I said, why don't they just make it like a second thing? Like, the longer you hold it, then you get penalized more time. So, you know, if you hold it for 3 seconds, after 3 seconds, then if you hold it any longer, then that little time clock thing ticks up and you get penalized. And it's the same rule, it's defined, it's the same for everyone, no matter who does the sticky bottle. Not like, oh, this time I'm going to do this, and this time I'm going to do something else, and this time it's defined, and this time they're going to take time off you or points off you or whatever. It just seems to have no rhyme or reason how they apply the rules. And I think that with international cycling being so big, and especially what's happened in Australia, is a lot of negativity. The cycling sport needs to be doing things just that little bit better than everyone. They need to be cleaner, they need to be smarter, they need to be more consistent, because people just go, what the hell's going on here? What the hell's going on there? And then people lose interest in the sport because it seems like there's no rhyme or reason to how they're managing it. Well, anyway, guys, leave your comments down below. What do you think of just a slap on the wrist and a little fine when someone has used an aerodynamic advantage with a skin suit and also socks? And even with the skin suit, it was kind of like they just didn't like it. It wasn't even like a define. It would say, oh, it's kind of different to the other team's outfit, so we think it's a little bit too much different. So even then, that's not defined. It's just real wishy-washy from what I've read and what I've heard. So guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. And you let me know, what do you think about the UCI? And what do you think about this fine for Annemiek? Do you think it was fair? Or do you think that it was like a slap on the wrist? Okay, guys, that's where I'm going to leave it. And I'll see you next vid.